I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and here today with me is Lawrence Roulston, Managing Director at WestBay Capital. Thanks so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
Great, and we're here at Minds and Money London. It's the third and last day of the show. You've had a chance to walk around, meet some people. What's the atmosphere here that you're seeing?
Well, I'm seeing it a lot more upbeat than I've seen over the last couple of years. And not to the extent that there's flocks of retail investors coming in here and looking around yet, but the smart money, the people that have been through a number of cycles in the mining industry. And, you know, myself and some of the people I'm talking to have been through 4 cycles now. We know what the bottom looks like, and we know when it's looking to turn up. And the view I'm getting from a lot of these people that have been around for a while is that we're starting to see an upturn. And some of these people are getting very active at deploying money into the sector at this stage because they see this as being the right time to be positioned. Right now we're facing the double whammy of, a bad market and tax loss selling, which means there's extraordinary bargains to be had right now. There's blood in the streets, and as some of the commentators here have pointed out, the time to buy is when there's blood in the streets, and right now that describes where we're at.
Okay, so investors who may or may not be attending here should be taking this as a signal to get in themselves, I imagine. Where are you seeing that smart money be deployed to at the moment?
Well, across all the commodities, across all the geographies, to a large extent, it's going to the management teams that have been around. Where there's a personal relationship, where these investors have seen particular management groups achieve success in the past, and they're going back to those same teams. So that's probably the major theme right now. Personally, I'm on the lookout, and I have, all the way through my career, really is looking for the rising stars, the people that we're going to look back on in a couple of years and describe as being the great success stories.
Yeah, it's always good to look at those tried and true people, but we do always hear about we need to kind of nurture the new people. Can you mention any that you're looking at?
No, nobody in particular comes to mind at this point that I can really talk about right now. But the teams that have been out there forever, they're great. They've been successful. They will be successful again. But sometimes they just don't have as much energy or enthusiasm the second or third time around. I mean, some of them do, absolutely, but there's others that become a bit jaded and they kind of sit back and watch the world go by. I was talking to guys just a few minutes ago that were just sitting back with their feet up. And,
oh no.
And what I'm really looking for are the rising stars, the guys that are out there that are really trying to make things happen.
And are there any particular jurisdictions or commodities that are exciting to you right now?
Well, gold is certainly the focal point for most of the investors coming in at this point. Silver, also very interesting to a segment of the investors. But there's interest across all the commodities. I've heard people talking about uranium and zinc and lead, and certainly copper is popular. So these people that understand the market are looking at all of these commodities. From a fundamental perspective, the prices are strong enough that mines that are operating are making money, there's cash flow, and projects are looking very attractive at the current metal prices. If they happen to go higher at some point in the future, then that's a bonus on what should already be an attractive investment opportunity.
At this stage in the market, kind of for the last year and a half, we've been seeing mergers and acquisitions. Is that something you would expect to see more of at this stage in the resource cycle?
Absolutely. And this industry, more than any, needs mergers and acquisitions. We've got roughly 3,000 junior mining companies. It's absurd to have that many companies. And a lot of them are what I would call lifestyle companies, where the people have been managing these companies for years or even decades. And their biggest mission in life is to make sure that their paycheck keeps coming in. So we need to weed out those kind of companies, and we need to bring smaller companies together into larger companies where you get a more effective use of G&A expenditures. And so that's part of what I'm working on, as a matter of fact, is I'm determined to bring several small pieces together, improve the property positions, and improve management and the G&A efficiency.
We've been seeing larger mergers in this space, and there's been a lot of talk this week, I think, about which types of mergers make sense. So to you, what would be, among small companies or larger ones, what would be a merger or acquisition that makes sense?
I think the first criteria would be geography. And there's too many companies that have a project in Zimbabwe and a project in Central Asia and something in northern Quebec, and it doesn't make sense logistically, but also I think there's so much value in really focusing on a particular area and understanding the geology of that area, and getting to become leading experts at the geology of that area. That's really what is going to lead to success, not dabbling in a bunch of different jurisdictions. So seeing a number of companies that are operating in one area and bringing those together and combining the geological knowledge and the talent to really focus on big pictures in particular areas.
I don't know if you can mention it, but if there are any geographical areas that interest you that you could mention or want to talk about.
Well, I can certainly mention, I'm passionate about the Golden Triangle of BC. It's an area that I first had exposure to in the 1980s when I was running an exploration program up there. And all through the time that I did the newsletter, I followed it closely. And now that I'm on my own and investing, and I could go anywhere in the world, but made a conscious decision to focus on the Golden Triangle. Now, people don't realize, but the past production plus the current resources, and I'm just talking about the compliant resources that have been found to date, adds up to 205 million ounces of gold, 1.3 billion ounces of silver, and 80 billion pounds of copper. I don't know of another area on the planet that has that concentration of metal value in an area of that size. There's just nothing like it on the planet. So, and we're only beginning to explore it. There's huge areas that have hardly been looked at. Or even more interesting, there's areas that have been looked at by tens of companies over a period of decades, where they've chased veins and they've followed up on old showings, but have never looked at it comprehensively. And that's really what I'm focused on right now, is pulling together a huge database of over a big area that has been dabbled in but never looked at comprehensively. And it's the old story of the 6 blind men and the elephant. And I don't know if you know that story, but so 6 blind men wander along, and there's an elephant, and the one guy bumps into the leg of the elephant and says, "Oh, an elephant is like a tree." And another guy finds his tail, and he says, "Well, an elephant is like a rope." And another guy finds his tusk and says, "Well, it's kind of like a spear." And it's only, so that's the way that geology has been evolving in this area, that people are looking at these little aspects of a big picture and putting it together. We're starting to see elephants emerge. And the interesting thing is we're seeing multiple elephants emerging in this area that I'm focused on.
Okay, that definitely sounds like something worth pursuing, bringing those companies together. I wondered, we've talked about mergers and acquisitions, we've talked about the general commodities upswing. As we head into 2020, are there other trends in the mining space that investors should be aware of?
Well, I think the overriding trend right now is the smart money is getting in there and getting position. And once the market starts to move, the broader investor base is going to start to come into the market. And it's sad, when I was doing the newsletter, I saw this over and over where, once the market has had its big run, then these people come in and they're too late. And then on the way down, they don't get out in time, and they end up holding until the bottom. And the smart money is made by those that come in early, and that's what I'm seeing right now. As we head into the new year, I think we're going to see a broadening of the investors that are coming in. I was talking to one fellow who has one of the stalwarts in the industry who's got a big brokerage firm and a long investment history. And he was telling me that he's getting more clients coming in now than he's had in years, high net worth individuals. And he's seeing a surprisingly large number of people under 40 and a large number of women coming in, that more than he's ever seen before. So I see that as not just encouraging, but I see that as I'm ecstatic to hear that kind of thing happening. I think another thing that's evolving is a lot of the mining companies are getting more involved in social media, which is reaching out to a much broader population base and a much larger investor base than we've ever been exposed to. I say tongue-in-cheek that the mining industry has been chasing the same 12 investors for the last 20 years, and at this moment those 12 are up to their eyeballs and they're deep underwater. They're not putting new money in, so the bringing new money into the industry is going to revitalize it. And as cannabis, in Canada certainly is, I think, past its peak, and a lot of those people, some of them have made a lot of money on the cannabis industry, and some of that money is going to start rolling into this sector, and a lot of wealth has been created in the younger professionals that are now looking to do something more than just have savings accounts. So that's, to me, that's a big trend, and I think it's going to really pump energy into this industry.
And would you say, along with that, as these people who are newer or less familiar with the mining industry come in, hopefully, do the companies have a responsibility to be educating people about the sector?
Well, yes and no. We certainly need to educate them to a certain level. But the flip side of that is, and this is a criticism that I've had for years, is that mining companies presenting to investors talk about geology and geophysics and geochemistry, and then they stand back and wait for the world to beat a path to their door. And I made the point in a panel this morning. I said, all these companies, they talk about geology, but they don't make a business case. And I think certainly we need some basic level of understanding, but we don't need to turn them into geologists or geophysicists or geochemists for them to make a wise decision on whether to invest in a particular company. So there's a balance there between giving them the basics, but not getting obsessed over getting into the minutiae of the industry.
Okay, well, I think we'll leave it there. That gives us a lot to think about as we head into the new year. Thank you so much for being here. That was great. Once again, I'm Charlotte McLeod with the Investing News Network, and this is Lawrence Roulston.